Hi everyone, thank you for joining our webinar on our 8-step guide to CRM planning. I'm Heather Black, Managing Director of Economic Change, a consultancy I set up 5 years ago, specifically focusing on Salesforce for non-profits and helping them implement new management processes and strategies, helping them measure their impact, adopting Salesforce as the new technology, and helping them weather the process of change management and thinking about how they engage and support the team and the organisation to adopt a new way of working, ultimately either through the new management processes or adapting new technology and using it every day to support everybody achieve their outcomes better. So our tagline now is a great strategy with clear goals with powerful technology. That's what we support you with. Our 8 Steps to CRM Planning course is a process that we take all our clients through. The reason we've done it now as a free online course where we enable selected individuals to participate in it is because we wanted to fast track some of the process at the beginning of a CRM implementation. When we get involved in an organisation, we appreciate that actually a lot of this information, if it's been talked about internally as a team, it helps you move much quicker. It helps your team think about what they would like from a CRM system. It will help you prepare for design sessions that you have with any external consultants. And it will, as I say, speed up the process and help you save time and money ultimately overall. So there's lots of great information within the CRM planning course. And I'm going to talk through the 8 steps and what we talk about so you can understand whether it's the right course for you. The foundations of the course has been influenced by 3 different certifications that our team at Economic Change have all participated in and helps us understand, well, actually what makes a good CRM implementation process. So originally the course I wrote off the back of completing a consultancy course with Salesforce back in 2012, which was a week-long course where we got to understand, well, what is the consultancy process that you should go through and what are all the elements that are really important and will help prepare a client in the best way. Subsequently, we've been on courses around business analysis and agile project management, and all of these experiences and training has enabled us to really put together what we see as some of the key ingredients. As a team, we've collectively worked on over 300 projects now with 174 non-profit clients. That increases every week. We want to keep giving you value. So what we're also going to do as part of the online course is embed some of our client case studies and experiences that they're sharing with our clients about, what was the process like for them, what did they prepare, what would they do differently if they were doing it again, just to give you a bit of insight about the journeys that other people have been on as well. So there's lots of added value there. So just as a quick summary of what the 8 steps entail, the first step is about the purpose of a CRM system. The second is about the process of implementation. The third is about preparing the business case. Number 4 is around choosing a system and how do you choose a system. Number 5 is designing the system. Number 6 is implementation of the system. Number 7 is successful application. And then number 8 is about navigating success, some of the pitfalls and best practice. So I'm going to dig into each of these steps a little bit deeper, just so you know what would be covered within the online course. So overall, we want you to work through each of these areas on this online course over the period of 3 months and to document what we'd call a plan. We call it an operational action plan, which helps you think through, well, actually, what is it that we want this CRM system to achieve and how do we best prepare for it. So within step 1, which is a step that we're also going to look at today as part of this course, is the purpose of a CRM system. So this is when we delve into, which customers can a CRM service and which are your priorities as an organisation, which departments will be wanting to use a CRM or will need to interact with it, what are your key business drivers for you and your team, and how do you go about doing a technical audit, which will be a practical task that you'll need to undertake. So as I say, we're going to delve into step 1 on this webinar so you get a feel for what each of the different modules is going to entail, and what value you might gain out of the course. So then moving on to step 2, within the implementation process, we talk through what is a typical process that you'll go through, what would be the normal time period, and what would you look at from the process of planning to embedding. Step 3 is about the business case. So if you need to convince executive sponsors and indeed the team more widely about the return on investment and the business value, then within this step we look at best practice, motivations. We give you an idea of a budget calculator, which can help you think about your cost savings and your potential income gains. And we give you a good checklist to kind of just run through to make sure that you've included everything on as part of that journey. Within step 4, we talk about how you go about choosing a system, and we look at CRM analysis. We talk about how you would select a CRM. We help you think about a CRM specification and what that should entail. And then we also give you some questions which are useful to ask from providers. So it will also aid you with provider selection. Within step 5, we look at planning the system. So this is where we do a bit of a deep dive into what is business analysis. Business analysis is one of the key things that you want to get right because it enables you to design the system in the best way. So we're going to talk through what are the key components of business analysis so you understand what to expect. We'll talk through the business improvement process, which is generally what your team will be going through and will need to think about and prepare for. And then we'll look at what does a typical system specification look like. So you'll understand what are the documents that you'll expect to get out off the back of this, which will help you understand this is now what we're going to build. Step 6 then looks at the implementation of the system. So here we talk about how you as an organisation can best prepare yourselves to implement and manage a system. So we talk about what the role of an in-house champion should be. So that's having somebody internally within your organisation who has experience or can train up in what the CRM system will do and can support then users internally to then sort of adopt it and roll it out over the long term. We'll talk about how to engage managers and get their buy-in into that overall process, because again, executive sponsorship is a key component of CRM success. We'll talk about data management and about data migration strategies and also user training. So what are the different ways that you can train users and get them on board with a system? Step 7 is then about successful application and embedding the system long term. So we'll talk through user adoption strategies. We talk about the traditional carrot and stick approach. That's still relevant. Obviously, you want everybody to be excited about the system, and it should be more about carrots than sticks, but there's definitely a role for each of those different areas, and we particularly talk about business rules and everybody being clear on what the business rules are going forward and that they've bought into them. We'll talk about user management, so how do you engage and support users long term, and part of that is also around system upgrades. So a CRM system is never going to sit still. It will need to continually be improved and evolved, and that might be in response to your users' needs, or it might be in response to new releases and new product releases that you can benefit from. So we'll talk about, how do you maintain a healthy system that everybody is still enjoying using, and that's all packaged into the ongoing management. And this will help you think about what are the costs long term, because obviously there's upfront implementation costs, there's then upfront sort of ongoing costs that you'll need to be wary of, and that's also about paying for somebody as an internal resource to manage all of these different things, but also then paying for any other additional product updates. And then there's step 8, which is about navigating success. So within this step, we just really reflect back on, well, what are some of the common pitfalls? What is best practice? And as I say, we will share some of our videos with clients about their journeys and what they learned along the way, and what were some of the key outcomes that you want to achieve. Now, if we reflect now on what this will help you achieve, I've put a slide together which is the criteria for successful planning, if you like. So if you have a plan in place and you document, if you like, all of the things that we've talked about from these 8 steps, overall, we want you to have a clear rationale for why you're doing this for your organisation. We want you to be clear as an organisation about your return on investment from a CRM. whether that's cost savings or increased income. We want you to have been able to complete an in-depth business analysis process and understand what that looks like. We'd like you to be clear on what customer and business intelligence looks like to your team. So you've sat around the table with your team and discussed all this with them. And one of the things that we will provide you with is some sort of, we've got an appendix which really looks at all the different sort of KPIs that might be of interest to your team, as well as then to sort of stimulate the thoughts really around, well, what is important to them? What is it they want to know weekly, monthly, quarterly about how they are performing as a team with their customers and against strategic KPIs. So we want you to be clear on what your customer and business intelligence is and what your KPIs are, and then obviously the CRM system will help you achieve that. And then we'll help you think about, we want you to have improved management processes. So one of the key benefits from technology is that you can automate things and it will help everything work more smoothly. So ultimately we want you to be clear as an organisation, what are the improvements that we expect to see? And that tallies nicely then with my final point, which is about measures of success. So, you know, if you've gone down this journey 6 months on, 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, how would you know that you've been successful? What are your benchmarks where you can say, hey, everybody, you know, we have now successfully achieved this. This was our vision at the start. Now we've done it. So, you know, this all needs to be kind of really clearly articulated at the beginning of this journey and agreed within a team, because then you can look back and actually say, you know what, we have achieved what we wanted to. Now, there's some clear inputs that need to be put into this. So this is, as I say, responsibility of the client side to kind of get this nailed down. So there needs to be some clear motivations. There needs to be some clear vision around the success factors, if you like. There needs to be somebody responsible in your organisation for in-depth planning, for becoming the in-house CRM expert, and we'll tell you a bit about how you could achieve that as we go through this slide deck. There needs to be somebody responsible for project management and change management. Now, we don't delve into the discipline of project management and change management within this specific free course. We do provide other support options to help people get trained in change management, and there are training options in project management you could take, but they're core components that we really recommend that people do adopt because it will give you the best chance of success. So ultimately you need somebody who's got responsibility within an organisation for making sure that this whole CRM process is being planned, managed, and people are being supported throughout this process. And so if you're the person listening to this webinar, then I'd assume that that's probably you, or you're going to appoint somebody that's going to take on this process, and you want to understand what is, you know, what is my or their responsibility to actually make this happen. So you know, you'll kind of get a real flavour for that, but ultimately you need somebody who's going to take on the steering wheel here and kind of move it through. The output of this process that we're going to be sharing with you is it will help you ultimately get financial sponsorship, because you'll be clear on what your achievements will be and what the budget will need to be to cover everything that we're going to talk you through. It will enable you to get team buy-in, because everybody will be much clearer on what is going to happen and what the process will be. That will then subsequently allow you to get better accountability and better adoption. And we've certainly seen, you know, when we've spoken to some potential customers around the CRM process, that they're struggling to get that accountability. So if you've spent a bit of time doing the legwork and getting a plan into place, which you can then communicate to everybody, everybody's going to be, oh right, I get it now. I understand why we need a CRM. I understand why we're going to change the way that we're working from currently. I understand what the plan will look like and what our vision will be. And that's part of the change management process. So, you know, change management is a discipline in its own right. It's something that should be taken seriously as part of any CRM project, which is why we do a separate course on that in itself. And the two really interrelate. Like the CRM planning process is more the upfront planning, but as I say, there's different components that you'll need to think through as you go through. So we're now going to delve into step one, just to give you a flavour really of what you know, the course is. So With step 1, we're going to be talking about the purpose of a CRM system. And within this module, we really want you to establish what your high-level requirements are for your CRM system. So the first part of the conversation that you would have with your team, and I would recommend getting together heads of departments across both operations and everything else into a room with the CEO to discuss, well, what is it we want the CRM to achieve? And the reason we encourage this is quite often the need for a CRM will emerge from one specific team or department, and they will think about, well, we need a CRM to manage fundraising or volunteers or one of these areas, which is absolutely great, and that might be the area of priority to start with. But a CRM can have a wider purpose and indeed improve the return on investment if it is being used for perhaps more than one stakeholder. So it's worth having that conversation to say, well, which stakeholders actually do we want the CRM to manage for us? And we're not just talking about their contact information, but we're talking about their communications with them. We're talking about the activities that you do with them. We're talking about processes and management processes with those different customers. And we're talking about any sort of outcome data feedback with those different kind of stakeholder groups. So it's about different teams and departments using this system, and I'm going to talk now through the different ways that you could use a CRM so you get an understanding of that. And quite often this is a massive light bulb moment for people when we normally would do this conversation with them during a scoping workshop, because they suddenly realise, oh, we didn't know Salesforce could do all of these different things. We just thought it would just be fundraising. And so, as I say, it's worth having that conversation. It might be part of your staged rollout process. So certainly we work with clients regularly over a period of time where they'll implement the CRM initially for fundraising, and then they'll move it into another department for program delivery, and then another department for volunteering. And so, the organisation that will see the big picture, but then they'll do a staged rollout process where they'll work through and evolve Salesforce to accommodate their needs at different points of the journey. And that's definitely a good way of doing it. And then you might decide, actually, we're quite happy with another database or another system for managing these types of stakeholders, which is absolutely fine. So you might keep those as separate systems, or you might integrate those systems, because maybe actually some of that data is useful, that you can see it in Salesforce, but you don't necessarily want it stored in Salesforce, but you need some way of seeing them. So we talk about integration, and integration can happen at different levels between them. So all of these things are things to think about. So let's delve a little bit more into what the different stakeholders are of what you might collect in your system. So the first sort of type of customer group is, I called them customers, but they could be beneficiaries, i.e. people that you're supporting as a non-profit who may pay or not pay for your services. Some people call them clients or participants. Again, use your terminology and be clear on what your terminology is. Now with beneficiaries, you can track all sorts of data about them. So you might track obviously their contact information, their demographic data. You might then track any communication with them. You might track any service delivery with them, i.e. support you've given them, like one-to-ones or training workshops or work experience, or anything that you want to track that you need to record. And then you might track the outcomes, i.e. what was the outcome of that support that you provided? Did they get a job? Did they increase their confidence? You might have assessment tools that you do around distance travelled, where you can calculate the change in scores ultimately over time. And you might track their feedback and evaluation data as well. And you can also track referrals that you've made. So if you've referred them to other agencies, then you might track that. So this is where you start interacting with other different types of stakeholders. So it might be that your beneficiaries are engaged with volunteers. So quite often people use the CRM system for volunteer management, and that can be from, again, tracking their contact information, but tracking volunteer application forms, DBS checks, training that you're doing with volunteers. It might be around the volunteer activity with you, whether that's they're helping out at events or they are working with specific individuals. And then you might track the outcomes and feedback for that volunteer as well in the system. And if you're referring to external agencies, you might track the referrals that you're making to that agency, as well as then referrals that they're sending back to you, and any outcomes that relate to that, any of those referrals. So, that's all really around customer management. Moving on to funders. Funders can be a whole range of different people. So you might have sales within this category. So you might have pure, like, direct sales customers, I suppose, who are helping generate income for your charity. You might have corporate sponsors. You might have trusts and foundations. You might have donors. You might have fundraisers, and all of the data around this you might want to track. So within Salesforce, we talk about the Nonprofit Success Pack, which is set up for fundraising management and all these different kind of areas. So thinking about, well, who are our different stakeholder groups for income generation and fundraising, and what is the information we want to track with them? It might be what donations they've given you, it might be what proposals you've got submitted to them and which you've won or not. It might be about when their funding rounds are next coming up and you need to submit. So there's all that sort of data, and also you can integrate payment data here. So you might want to integrate with online payment carts or your financial management system to understand who's paid you or not. So that's a type of integration that I was talking about before. Then moving on to internal stakeholders. A CRM system can also have the purpose of a HR system. So you could have all your employee information in there alongside, their reviews, their CPD, their training, their contracts, all of that sort of information. It's a HR system. So some of our clients have moved, got rid of one HR system and replaced it and started using Salesforce. And again, you can set up security to make sure people only have access to the relevant information. Now, alongside employees, you might have contractors. And again, contractors might need access to your CRM system, so you can buy maybe reduced licenses. So within Salesforce, we have community cloud licenses where a lower price point, so contractors may be able to access the system, see their contracts that they've been given with you. So you might have commissioned a contract on this date to this date with this payment term, and that they've given you an e-signature. But you might also then track, they might need to log data in that system to tell you what they've done for you, whether that's with beneficiaries or any type of service delivery. And similarly with suppliers, you can create a database of suppliers and not only track all their information, but track which suppliers got involved in which activities, what the price was, whether it was successful or not, whether you'd recommend them for future. And so that then helps any future team go, who do we use for event management, or which venues have we used before, and how much was it before previously, and actually was it a good venue or not? And if you're collecting all of that rich data, it means it's much quicker for the next team to find something they need and reuse it. And then the final stakeholder group is influencers. And influencers, we've sort of packaged these in three different areas. One is some of our customers work with like political contacts, so it might be politicians, MPs, local government, for example, where you might want to invite them to events that you're doing. You might want to send them letters. You might want to get their backing as an ambassador. And same as sort of as I've talked about, really, you can collect their contact information, but you can also track what they've been engaged in, whether they responded to you or not, and track the outcomes of that. So you can start to understand which MPs or which politicians are more involved with your organisation versus not. The second one here is media. So again, everybody wants a list of all the journalists and etc. that you're working with, but also within a CRM, you could build it out to track all your press releases, all your media coverage, all of your case studies. And then you start to build this picture of actually what is our media activity, and have quite rich KPIs around this sort of data. And that allows you to see easily which journalists have been most proactive, who's really supported you before. And then, you can easily report on your coverage to, the SMT group, etc. The final stakeholder on here is partners. So we've set up quite a few partner communities for clients, and this is where people are working in partnership, obviously, And what needs to happen is that partner needs access to the CRM system to, be able to work collaboratively with certain beneficiaries or volunteers or whatever it is. And it means giving secure access to a part of the database that they need to see, on records that they need to see in order for them to work with you. So in the same light as maybe any agencies you're working with, some of the agencies might be partners, but you can look at whether that is something you would need to do. The other kind of consideration with partners is, do you maybe need an integration with a system that's used by a partner, because maybe that's going to be the most effective way to collaborate on things. So as I say, lots of different things to think about here. And this ties in nicely with what we call the cross-departmental conversation. And this is really echoing all the things that I've talked about a moment ago. So what you want to do is the reason for cross-departmental conversations is quite often there's overlap between all of these different areas. And so when I've spoken to income generation teams before, quite often they've needed somebody from finance there to be part of that conversation, and they've needed somebody from marketing to be there within that conversation, because actually all of the roles and responsibilities overlap, and there needs to be consensus around how new management processes using technology will best work for everybody involved. So if you as the internal champion can get some of these conversations started early on, it means that when you engage in consultancy, there's some decisions that's already been made, hopefully, and that can save you some time and money that you're not having to pay a consultant to perhaps facilitate these conversations from day one. So I completely appreciate if you might not have the resource or necessarily the confidence to facilitate some of these conversations early on, but if you can, great. If not, it's something that we'd encourage and support that happens. So we've also found this with delivery of services, for example. So with delivery of services, quite often, we'll be talking to teams that represent the front line and the project managers who are making sure that all the services to beneficiaries are happening and customers. But then there might be an impact manager there who's trying to gather all the data around impact. And then there's a volunteer manager that might be sat in the room too. And equally, fundraising have quite an invested interest in service delivery, because they need the statistics for their fundraising activity. So we might have a fundraising manager in that conversation also about, well, actually, I need this data for our funding bids because this is what funders are asking of us. So can we make sure we collect this data and can report on it easily? So delivery of services is definitely a team, and will bring certain people together. Operations, as I say, finance will probably want a conversation in their own right about what they need, but they will be probably looking at income generation or delivery of services of and their roles and interactions with those teams. HR and supplier management again may overlap with delivery of services or the comms team, and HR is quite internal focused in that sense, but it's again a conversation that needs to happen looking at those areas. And the comms team, who are responsible for marketing, communication, campaigning, might have some specific activities that they manage and solely manage themselves, or they might have a role and responsibility that is really working with the other teams collectively. So as I say, having departmental conversations and then having cross-departmental conversations is normally what we'd do as part of the design process. If as part of this planning process you can initiate some of these discussions already, it starts the conversation about what are our priorities for the system. Do we want it, which customers or stakeholders do we want the CRM to manage? What is top priority? What might we want in the future? And actually, what don't we want to include? And then everybody, the reason about having these big conversations with everybody in the room is everybody's then agreed on what the priorities are, and nobody's feeling like they weren't consulted or that their needs weren't specifically listened to. If you can facilitate and agree a consensus, everybody then feels pretty happy about, okay, I see the big picture, I can see why we've focused on certain things, and that leads me nicely really into the business driver conversation. So this conversation that you have, the way that you would prioritize and help people understand the prioritization is around really discussing, well, what are our business drivers here? Like, what is it we need to achieve from this CRM system, and what will success look like? So collectively, as a team conversation, you need to say, what do we see as the measure of success, which might be related to management, financial, resources, or your customers. And I've put some suggestions on here. This isn't an indefinite list. It's a starting point to kind of give you some ideas and hopefully stimulate a conversation where people put across their own ideas. So within sort of management drivers is the first sort of area here to look at. Is it about installing quality control processes? Is it about being able to better monitor and report on key performance indicators that perhaps you can't do now? Is it about improving efficiency and visibility and accountability for your team? Because effectively, maybe the team members can't see what else is going on with different people, so it's really inefficient. And that, if people have greater transparency about what's going on, that might help improve productivity overall. And the other area around productivity is about automation, using technology to improve the speed that things happen and reduce manual administration for people. So that helps to save time and money and cost. So there might be key management drivers that are really sort of driving this conversation. The second might be financial. So is it that you can reduce your costs? So maybe rather than having 10 systems that, some clients have had 18 systems, is it about having one system or 2 or 3 systems? So you're going to reduce costs, not only around the cost of the software, but also about managing and maintaining those systems. Or is it about increased profits? So actually it will help you make more money. So the budget calculator bit that we cover in one of the steps will really help you kind of think through this. Is it about monitoring fundraising sales pipelines? So perhaps, your baseline is that you can't clearly see as an organization all of your potential income because it's not in one place. So the CRM system will help combine all of that, and you'll be able to clearly see all the different income pipelines that you've got and what the probability is. You might have a situation where you're delivering contracts and delivering support to people, and you may have a payment by results type relationship where you've got to pull out the data and submit it to claim down the funding for the support you've delivered. So we've set up quite a few CRM systems that have that in place. So people have looked at the CRM system as being the place to manage all that data and to be able to accurately claim down the right data and have the evidence there. And similarly, for people running projects and contracts, they've also used it as like a project management system. So they're able to monitor their cash flow and their expenditure on those projects. And again, it's then all in one place. So rather than using a separate project management system, they are using a project management system within the CRM, so everything's together collectively. Moving on to point 3 is about resource management. So is it that you need to reduce administration by automating activities, which is something I touched on before? Is it that you need to track team activities and be able to get that transparency about what's going on elsewhere? And that will improve and coordinate teamwork. So that's something that I sort of talked about in step 1. Or is it actually that you need better HR performance management, that you need to get a better HR system in place because maybe you don't have one already, or people choose to use a CRM rather than having a separate HR system, so it's only one system that people need to log into. So all of these are different options that you have. The fourth area is around customer experience, and this is quite often a big motivation for people because they realise they don't have oversight as to what's happening with customers. They don't have an understanding about whether their services are hitting the mark or not. They don't have the 360-degree view about a customer. If Joe Bloggs was a donor and a volunteer and a beneficiary, you wouldn't perhaps know that as a baseline, but their vision is then to really move that through to a process where actually they've got all those stakeholders in one place, and that Joe Blogs in one system can be seen that they are a donor, a beneficiary, and a volunteer. So it is really about, well, how do we create one system that's giving us all this data? And then that's when the marketing team get really excited, because if the marketing team understand how engaged somebody is in your organization, it allows them to be more productive at their marketing and sales strategy, because they can really target people who are really engaged in one area of work, but they can also identify people who are not engaged and develop a different strategy for them, and start using marketing automation because they understand who people are more easily. And overall, having a better level of intelligence helps you have better customer relationships, and it also helps you then monitor customer satisfaction so you can respond to everybody better. Once you've kind of gone through all those conversations, what you'll be able to gather is quite a rich set of information from your team, which we would call an internal audit. So without really knowing it, what you are doing is an internal audit at this point. And so what we would expect to see off the back of this is a customer management audit, i.e. so you've written down who all your different stakeholder groups are, and you've been able to understand, well, what is the information we currently track about these customers, and what is the information we want to track about these customers, i.e. are you wanting to collect more information than you are doing currently? And then what you'd also want to do as part of this is what we'd say is do a technology audit. So for each stakeholder group, you want to record where you're currently storing information about these people, i.e. which software tools, whether it's spreadsheets or emails or other CRM systems or whatever it is. And then once you've got that information, you'll be able to just summarize in a sort of a technology audit what all the different software tools that your organization is currently using. So quite often we see the baseline that some people are using Google Drive, some people are using Dropbox, some people are using box.net, or a whole different variety of places, and there isn't consistency. Now, I think one of the good things that came out of the GDPR process is a lot of people might have done this already, because as part of GDPR we were sort of tasked with going, well, where's our customers, what are we doing with their data, and where are we storing it now? So a lot of this legwork may well have been done, which is brilliant. If not, it's something that I'd definitely recommend you do. And with that technology audit, as I say, if you summarize all those different tools that you're using, that's when you start to streamline and go, actually, do we really need all these tools? Which are the ones that we can merge? What should we centralize within the new CRM, if that's the way you're going? And where might we need to integrate certain systems together because we need them to talk to each other, whether that's just to show information in the system or whether it needs to pass data from one system to another. So the technology audit is really useful, and that just really sums up sort of point 3 and 4 for me here. So point 3 is that business need analysis. That's where you're kind of going, which are fit for purpose, where do we need a CRM to either replace or fulfill a new need? And then point 4 is that gap analysis. So this is where we're saying, what is the purpose of the new CRM now, in year 1, year 2, year 3? Are we wanting to use a CRM now for fundraising, but in year 2 we'll do volunteer management because actually we've got something that's fit for purpose right now, but in year 2 we'll be ready. And if you have these big picture conversations now, what it will mean is that you're clear on your budget requirements and your plan for not just year 1, but year 2, year 3 and ongoing. And in a non-profit sector, the reality is that people need to fundraise for these different solutions. And if you've done this legwork and you've worked through all the modules in our CRM planning course, it's going to help you collect a lot of rich information that is what funders are wanting to know. So sometimes the lead time for some of our clients will be a year, because we might have had these initial conversations with them at a scoping day, and then they go, okay, brilliant, we've taken away all this information, we've now submitted for funding. When they get funding, that's when we get involved with them for their CRM implementation. So as I say, all of the information we come in this course, if you kind of work through it, it will help you articulate better to funders why you're needing a system and that you've got a better idea of budgets. Now, with the free CRM course, we will give people access to Litmus LMS, which is our learner management system. We pay for licenses of Litmus, so we only want to give access to the free course to people who are going to really need it and want it, for access for a 3-month period. And to make sure that you make the most of this, we want to book in a one-to-one consultation with you, because we want to make sure that you've properly worked through the process and been able to apply it, but then you're also able to ask us any questions that you have, sense check anything, and we get a feel for kind of what you're needing. So it's just that sort of, buy-in really. And if you want any additional support from us, then obviously we're here to help at the next stage of your journey. So the free CRM course comes without any obligations to work with us whatsoever. As I say, we will be selective about who we put on it, and that's not about you needing to have to work with us following on. It's just about making sure that you're at the right point. And the reason we launched the free course was that economic change is all about empowering nonprofits. We have evaluated as a team, what will help nonprofits reduce their time and money that they spend on this process. How can we help you speed up the thought process and be more prepared? Because we appreciate that CRM planning isn't a lot of your day jobs. It's something that might be completely new to you before. You might have hired somebody to help you who's an expert in this, which is great, but not all nonprofits have that time and budget to do that. So we want to basically give you a quick training session, which it will be about 8 hours of training and support in the course. So you'll work through it, and then you'll have to do the homework of putting together a document. But if you want to work with us more, these are the different things that we can offer you as you work through. So the first is a Salesforce admin charity training course. Now, we introduced this because, as I've talked about, an in-house champion for CRM should be trained up in the CRM that they choose to work with. So if you're going to be working with Salesforce as your chosen CRM solution, we would be highly recommending that the person becomes trained, either 1 or 2 people, whoever it is in the organisation, to become an in-house Salesforce champion. We run a 6-month course, which is 8 hours a week, that covers all of the Salesforce administration and MPSP functionality. We run the course every quarter, and it's 1,500 plus VAT at the time of this presentation. That could be subject to change in the future, but that's what it is right now. We've been running this course curriculum now since 2016. It's working really well, we just really want to empower people to be able to manage their systems better. We see a key criteria of success with a CRM rollout is that there is somebody trained in-house as a Salesforce admin, and we can support that Salesforce admin either through one of our support contracts or through our Salesforce champion membership, which I'll talk about in a moment, where we can support them with more advanced functionality. But we really want to train up and support somebody in-house. The second aspect here that I'd sort of really consider at the startup stage, so about when you would take on board this, as soon as you know that you're going to work with Salesforce, then I'd sign up for an admin charity training course, because you start the journey of learning what it can do, and you can never do that too early. So I would always start that journey ASAP. But given that it's a 6-month learning process of 8 hours a week, you can appreciate there's quite a lot to learn. So I'd sort of get in there, and we'll kind of support that process. The second course that I'd also recommend, which will support you, is making sure that you have a change management plan in place. And I'm a change management practitioner, and the reason I did my change management course and learning was I realised that it was fundamental to CRM project success. It is one of the 3 reasons why projects can fail predominantly. One is around lack of business analysis, one is around lack of executive sponsorship, one is around change management. Now, change management for me, if you get that right, that will help make sure that business analysis and executive sponsorship happens much better. So change management is a discipline in its own right, just as project management is a discipline in its own right. I've now set up a 3-month course, which is £1,000 plus VAT. Again, we run these courses quarterly, where we train people in how to put together a change management plan. There's an 8-step process to that as well over 3 months, and there's homework, but there's also guest videos and speakers talking about how they facilitated change within their organisation. So again, something I'd encourage from the start, and sort of apply as you work through. Now, in terms of if somebody is already experienced in Salesforce, we'd work with them either through Salesforce Champion membership package, which is where people are qualified admins already, but we support them with fortnightly group coaching and training. Anybody who takes out a support contract with us to provide sort of one-to-one hours of support to people get free access to our Champion membership, so they get a lot of added value. And at the time of sort of, again, this presentation, it's 500 plus VAT for that, which is subject to change in the future. And then the final area is where we really get hands-on with a client, either through support contracts that I've mentioned already, which is post-implementation really, or we get involved in the implementation process, and that's where we get involved in the business analysis, the technical implementation and the training. We work with very small charities to those that are national, international charities, so we've worked with all levels. We do offer a charity discount package, which is where we train mums who are returning back to work as Salesforce admins, and as part of their training experience, when they've completed their 3 months of training, they then work underneath and with my project management team, offering 6 free days of admin support on a project. So what that means is that we can charge you some consultancy days, which would be part of the package, because we need to lead on the design and the project management of the overall project and the training. But the build, we can help discount the build work because the mum's offering 6 free days work on the build. And so we're able to offer discounts to people. So at the point of this presentation, we'd worked with 46 charities, offering them discounts, and that equates to £1,888 £1,000 worth of in-kind pro bono support that we've been able to offer. So it really is adding a lot of value to non-profits. We like supporting you. The reason we offer these different ways of working with you is that we wanted to offer a cheap price point for charities to embrace Salesforce and get involved in it, as well as being, as I say, more in-depth hands-on type role, because we appreciate different charities have different budgets and different offerings. So if you want to work with us in the future, obviously we'd love to get to know what you're doing. We will offer you a free one-to-one consultation anyway, where we can support you and get to grips with it. We'd be happy to provide a proposal, of course, for any CRM project, or you might want to get engaged in our training, our change management courses, or anything else if you need to. There is no obligation to get more involved with us as part of this online course, but as I say, we're happy to help in whichever way we can. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this webinar. I hope it has been useful for you and you've got value over step 1. If you want to apply for our free CRM planning course, then drop me an email to heather@economicchange.co.uk and I'll send you the application form. We do ask you to complete an application form because we want to understand where you are at right now. And that, as I say, we're giving it to people who are at the right point. And, there's a bit of effort involved. As I say, there is a cost to us for giving you access to the course. So we really want to make sure that, you're at the right stage of the journey. If you have any questions, also, you can drop me an email and we can respond to you and support you as we need. But thanks again for being part of this. If you do join us on the online course, we look forward to welcoming you and supporting you through that next stage. Thank you very much.